Hi, everybody. Welcome to Queers and Soaps. I'm Tommy, and I'm once again joined by my lovely co host, Angel.
Hi.
Today, we are bringing you a supersized edition of our Port Charles Time in a Bottle coverage. We're covering weeks 10 and 11, and they're very loaded. We had some
Mhm.
new characters. So let's roll the credits and we'll get right into it because
Okay, let's do it.
lots to talk about. All right, so we open up the week, and I put Allison wants to fight Jamal. Like she looked like she was like ready to like, just like throw
Yes,
it out
she was.
because he is racing and didn't tell her about it to pay off
Mhm,
her debt for the 25 grand that she thought that her nana gave her, but she
mhm.
got from um he gives Jack a look like he told Allison, and she's like, no, don't do that. She's like, I couldn't beat it out of him if I wanted to.
Mhm.
I was like, that's your best friend.
Yep.
um Eve wonders if Chris's proposal is an attempt to make up for his wrongdoing in the past.
What do you think about that?
I don't know. I feel like there was a turn in Chris these last couple of weeks.
I
I
feel like
feel like he all of a sudden is very emotional and like looking for like a family unit and like some kind of like closeness to somebody.
I think part of that is because Christina was taken from him, and then of course the other part is Livy, like how that blew up in both their faces.
But I
Um,
never really thought he cared about Livy. I just felt like Livy was just kind of like another warm body, like how
mhm.
he used to sleep around. I
Yeah,
didn't really buy that he actually cared about Livy. It was
yeah,
like
me
his
neither.
um I don't know. I know he cares about Eve, so maybe we'll get into it. Um he says they've always had a connection and they're friends. So him saying that, he also said maybe it'll be like a soap opera and time will actually fall in love.
The enemies to lovers,
Right.
famous enemies to lovers trope.
um Frank and Ian replay Frank knowing Ian saying he would love Eve for always. And Ian thinks that he knows somebody that could help him. Now, with that part of the story, I couldn't remember the guy from the island's name, and Ian kept saying it, and I couldn't make out what he was saying for a while. But I retroactively put Chief because I didn't realize that's what he was saying.
Mhm.
Um, Jamal tells Allison it was Zach that planted the money for Allison and that he is racing to protect her. Zach wants to talk to Jamal in private, and Jamal tells him he's done racing. Zach says there's another race in 3 weeks. I wonder what happens in 3 weeks.
Huh.
And Jamal says he's done, and Zach says he's done when he says he's done. Jamal says maybe he'll go to the police, and he reveals that he's been wearing a wire and says if anything happens to him or his friends, it's going to go to the cops.
Mm.
Um, where am I? So Ian introduces Frank to the man from the island. This is Chief. This is
Chief.
probably when I Frank explains to Chief that he's been communicating through the computer to Rhonda in 1973. And he prevented her from going to the dance to sleep with a guy named Scott Baldwin. And so now his girlfriend Karen was never born. Um,
I like how you said a guy named Scott Baldwin.
well, that's
Like
how
he's not a main
I
character.
didn't take it down as he said it because Chief doesn't know who Scott Baldwin is.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
um, Chris thinks it would be a great way to start over in a new town and have a family and maybe open a private practice. And Eve is kind of like, She looks like she's actually like mulling over the idea,
Mhm.
which I don't get because the Ariana thing has to end at some point. Does she think that her and Ian are just not going to be together? Like, I don't understand like her mindset with that.
I think she thinks that the liver's going to be found, and that Ian is going to find an excuse to stay with her.
Oh, that's true. She's causing trouble. Ariana actually didn't appear much at all in these 2
Yeah,
weeks,
she appeared like once or twice.
but she's still causing trouble.
Yeah, it's like that looming over,
Right.
over her.
Really hung on. I really thought she was going to be gone in 2 weeks into this arc, and she's
Right?
just on to the bitter ends.
No,
Because I know once Tainted Love starts, I don't ever remember any mention of her. So
yeah, I didn't see her at all in Tainted
this
Love.
mention because I just didn't know about her. It just like went over my head. But Ian assures Frank it's possible to travel in time because even him had done it. He said something like they made love through different time periods. And I was like, TMI. He doesn't need
TMI. Frank probably goes back in time, sees Eve and Ian, like, oh, come on now.
Get a room. Frank thinks that this is odd, and Ian says the man talking through the computer to the past. Livy says the four of them, meaning her, Jack, Jamal, and Allison, should make a pact to be 100% honest with each other at all times. So I felt like this was kind of like solidifying them as like a quad. Like, this is the friend group.
This is it. This is our friend group.
Zach is determined to get his hands on that tape. Eve is actually considering Chris's proposal and asked to think about it, and Chris seems hopeful that she might actually say yes. Frank literally is begging Chief to help him. And Chief is concerned that if he goes back, they may not know where he is or where he ends up, and he could get lost in time forever. And Frank says he still wants to try it. Eve fantasizes about what her life would be like marrying Chris and having a family with him.
I like those scenes a lot.
Yeah, I did too. And actually,
I like them.
I feel like I'm warming up to Chris, seeing this softer side of him. Good job, Nolan North, whatever, however you say his last name.
Nolan North.
Yeah. Even though you reject us.
You reject poor Charles, yet you go on Pretty Little Liars. I'm sure he rejects Pretty Little Liars too. I think we all want to reject Pretty Little Liars. But not poor Charles. Poor Charles was great.
Frank's mom, Joseph, Lucy, Kevin, and Victor are all concerned about Frank's behavior and think an intervention is in order. Chief and Ian agree to help Frank and watch over him as he travels through time. And Frank says he'll smooth things over with his friends and loved ones and head back over there to begin his journey. Eve imagines seeing Ian years down the line and him never having settled down with anyone. Now, this I thought was funny because the outfits that they were wearing were very old-timey, and I'm like, this is supposed to be the future. Why are you dressed like you're like in like
he has like a little hat on.
Your hat, like
hat on, looking like an old-timey hobo or something like that.
Yeah, it's years down the line and he still looks the same age.
You know how fashion just repeats every 20 or 30 years or so?
Right.
They probably were like, okay, this is the time where we all dress up like it's the 1920s or 1910s.
This jars her out of her fantasy, and she calls Chris to tell him she needs time alone to think about it, and she's going away.
She always goes away.
Ian is visited by his ghost sister, and I really didn't take notes about this because those scenes I don't really pay attention to those scenes.
I think it was basically the same thing, and I could be conflating the two because I did actually post her first time there to somebody because they were like, I want Susan Haskell on the soap opera. And I'm like, she can just play Kristen Forrester.
Mm.
because they totally played siblings on Poor Charles.
I saw your tweet. I saw that
Yeah.
tweet.
So I think it's more of the same stuff that she had been saying. I think it's like, you're like, why are you talking to me? I'm dead. Like,
Could you imagine him and her playing siblings on Bold and him being like, "Hey sis," and like just like putting his arm around her, like a wink to the audience. um, Frank tells everyone he was exhausted and is going to stay at a friend's place in Alaska to relax. Lucy wonders about the drawing of Karen and wants to see it to see if she sees a resemblance to Scott Baldwin.
Mhm.
Lucy and Kevin think Frank is lying and that he's actually going to look for Karen. Frank writes Neil a goodbye letter in case he doesn't make it back. And Frank's mom gives him her rosary beads for his travels. Now, I felt like this was like not a random tidbit, but it was like brought up numerous times leading to the end that I felt like the
Mhm.
rosary beads are going to play a part in maybe him getting back.
I think so too.
Because I just feel like they're focusing too much on this little detail, and I just feel like that means it's going to be a big detail later on.
Hmm.
um, Kevin has been in his office all night, and he sketches a picture of Karen based off the memory of the description that Frank gave him.
Hmm.
His first appointment cancels, and he ends up like canceling his whole day so he can start his investigation. And later he confronts Frank about lying about going on a fishing trip to Alaska. And Frank says the truth is he's going to see a girl he's been dating that he's known from town. And Kevin shows Frank the picture that he drew and wonders if that's the girl.
Mm.
Frank says he has to do whatever it takes to make it work and get the girl back. And Kevin ends up saying he'll support him in whatever it is he needs.
Hmm.
Eve's car gets a flat tire, and she receives a phone call from Chris wondering where she's going. She says she just needs to get away and ponder his proposal. And Chris has a private jeweler come to show him engagement rings.
No, Chris.
And he seems pretty confident that Eve will accept. Meanwhile, Ian finds her on the side of the road and offers the help. She says she's getting away and asks him to come with her, and almost slips by saying, "Just you, me, and our ...
So, a mini spoiler. Do believe so. Remember in the flashbacks that with Chris, Eve, and the little girl.
Mm-hmm.
I do believe that they have a boy.
Oh,
I think they have a boy,
okay.
but I just forgot the name of the boy.
I don't remember
And of
Eve
course,
having a baby.
on this show, as the arcs go on, they phase out kids.
Right.
So, Serena's not on there, Neil's not on there.
It's removed from the credits.
Yeah, anybody who's like under the age of like whatever ages like Livy, Jack, Allison, and Jamal are, they're just phased out. So
I mean, at this point, Neil is just a mention. Like he doesn't.
Neil's just to mention, like, yeah, but it's easy to like not mention because Courtney's over in Europe. So
Yeah. He says he has to stay and help Ariana, and Eve thinks. Wait, my notes are all jumbled up. Oh, he says it's to help Ariana and eventually maybe help us all. And Eve says, "Good luck to us all," and then drives off.
good luck to us all.
The quad wants to close the bike shop early and go clubbing. And Jamal enters his apartment and sees it's all wrecked, and he tries to like push them to just go. I'm like,
Mhm.
you need to shower. You're like covered in bike grease, but whatever.
Yeah, right.
And Allison's just like, I just want to freshen up. And she like storms into the apartment and it's trashed.
Mm.
So clearly Zach and Sam and whoever else are looking for that tape. Jamal says that he hid a copy in plain sight. And he thinks when Zach hears his voice on the tape that he will think twice about hurting them or risk a copy being sent to the police.
Mm-hmm.
Allison wants to hear the tape. She says, as the threatenee, I would like to hear my threat or whatever.
I like Allison's lines. I like the lines that they give Allison.
I wrote threatenee, and I'm like, I'm not even sure this is a real word, but spell check didn't kick in. So we see Zach listening to the tape, which cuts off to music playing, and we see the same with Jamal and Allison.
Mm-hmm.
We do see Ariana looking sickly at home, and she's accepting the fact that she's going to die. And I'm like, all right, girl, well, go.
That's like the same thing that she said 2 weeks ago, though. She's like, I'm just going to accept the fact that I'm dying. Okay, then die, please die.
Stop hanging in there.
Stop hanging in there.
And Ian tries to give her hope again. Kevin fills Lucy in on what went down with Frank, and she gets excited that he got Frank to admit that he wasn't going fishing, and she asks how he did, and he shows her the picture he drew, and Lucy thinks that it resembles Rhonda. Frank is warned by Chief that he must not try and change anything he might want to in 1973. He must just fix his mistake and come back. He takes the drug as he falls asleep. Time in a Bottle plays, and he remembers all his times with Karen.
No.
Eve arrives at the cabin she and Ian sought shelter in the night that they escaped from in the helicopter in Fate. And Frank arrives successfully in 1973.
He gets a newspaper and pulls the newspaper. He's like, what year is this? And then it says Port Charles Herald. I think that's what it's called. And it says March. What was the date? March 9th, 1973?
It may have been the 6th, because I think the 7th is the day that the accident happens.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember the exact date though, but it would probably have to be before.
Yes, I know he mentions the date. He mentions the date, and the date does line up with when that episode aired.
Oh. Okay. So I remember a few podcasts back you had mentioned that you had wished that they had used some of the effects they used in the promo of it when he was going crazy or whatever. And I wish they had used the effects from the promo of him like traveling in time.
Traveling through time. But you know what? I think that's in like the Time in a Bottle promos. Like, I know that like I think it's the Port Charles Explosion YouTube channel that like will post like the full like promos.
Okay.
Not the Soap Night promos, but like the Port Charles Time in a Bottle promos.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Like,
the ABC
like kind
one.
of music video type of promos.
The ABC
like,
would air?
Huh?
ABC would air those?
Yeah, ABC would air those.
Okay.
I guess before each arc, because I know that there's one for Tainted Love, which is like the one with Livy cradling Jack, Gabriella like kind of posing for the mirror.
Was that the one that I sent you? Was that what that was? Oh, okay. I thought it was a fan video.
Yeah, I think those were like they were played before the arc, or maybe even the first week of the arc.
Okay. Oh, that's
because
cool.
we watch the Soap Net airings, sometimes I don't think they show those.
Yeah.
Because they'll play like maybe they'll play during All My Children, maybe they'll play during One Life to Live, maybe they'll play during like whatever primetime soap was airing on Soap Net at the time. But
yeah, just to get other eyes that maybe aren't watching that. So like, what's that? Livy confesses that she was the one that recorded over the tape by accident, and I'm like, I could see how that could happen. It was 2001.
Mm-hmm.
I may have been guilty of that once or twice.
Yeah, probably
with the VCR tape, not with a radio tape.
Yes,
I may have accidentally recorded over my kindergarten graduation. I was in
What
delight.
did I accidentally record over for a soap opera? I feel like maybe I accidentally recorded a soap opera that was like, I think I accidentally recorded Generations for like another soap opera, which man, that with the amount of episodes of Generations that are not that don't exist, like
I know. I want to see that
go
show so
on Peacock, air it.
bad. Right.
Sally Sussman wants you to air it.
Oh, side note, Sally Sussman. I don't know if I mentioned this already, but I was watching The Facts of Life and I saw Sally credited as a writer on one of the episodes I watched.
Oh, cool.
I was like, wait, I know that name.
Yeah.
There's a knock at the door and it's Zach and Sam. Jamal tries to convince them to that he still has a full original copy of the recording, but Zach isn't buying it based on their demeanor. They all look a little like shook.
Yeah.
He talks to Jamal and Allison outside and wants Jamal to race one more time. Frank is in 1973 and he runs into himself as a child. And his mother shouts out Frankie and he sees his mother in 1973. Now I'm watching this and Greg is like, is that his son? And I'm like, no, that's him. And he's like, oh, he went in time already? Went back in time already? Now, Greg's never watched Port Charles, but because I've been watching it, I feel like he's like half paying attention, like while he's on his phone. So he's slightly invested.
I thought it was weird that like they have her in this like wig,
Right?
like this like big wig, and
Well,
then she's obviously like older sounding. So because it's Pat Crawley, so she was in what was it? Please Don't Eat the Daisies. I want to say is that the show that she was in like the 60s, I think.
Oh, she's like a known actress before
Yeah,
this?
she was a known actress back then, and then like she got Port Charles decades later. So
it's funny, the actor that plays Victor, I knew him from 90210 because he was the character of Claire's father. So when I started watching Port Charles, I was like, oh, Claire's father's on here.
Yep, I remember that. And then like also little side note that I forgot to mention, I forgot that Frank, Joe, and Kevin are in-laws.
Yeah, they mentioned that when they were talking about like the intervention, and I was like, oh yeah,
I forgot all about that. I was like, wait a minute, I forgot because Mary and Victor are married.
Right. Once he said that, I was like, oh right, Victor.
Yeah.
That would make you guys kind of related. Kevin pays Rhonda a visit and they discuss how her drinking is killing her. And she's like, I know that already. Like
she's like, and
they talk about Frank and he eventually shows her the picture he drew. Eve is at the cabin thinking about Ian and Chris, and she goes for a walk and seems to get lost in the woods, but comes across Michael Easton chopping wood.
Finally! Oh my god, it's happening!
I still have a crush on 2001 Michael Easton.
I think we all did.
With his fake glasses. Because that means you're a good guy if you have glasses.
Yes.
You're a nerd.
It's like a Clark Kent type of thing.
Right. So then we start the next week, and I put Michael Easton sees Eve watching him, because we don't know the character's name yet. But spoiler, it ends up being Michael also. Frank runs into Caroline at Kelly's. Now, you want to talk about bad wigs. That wig had her wearing.
Yes.
Oh my god. It looked like a wig.
It did look like a wig.
Was she supposed... I don't know. I feel like based on the pictures, she didn't have reddish hair like that. But, all right. I guess that's the wig they chose. So I'm guessing Caroline was out of high school already. Like she was the older sister. Because Rhonda / Cookie is 16. So I was just assuming those were like...
Or maybe she's a senior in high school.
Maybe, but the way she was talking about like the dance and everything, it just sounded like I don't know. She didn't seem like she was
Yeah.
into that, like she would be going. Um, the man chopping wood introduces himself as Michael. He thinks that Eve is lost, and she admits maybe a little bit after, a little fight. Like, no, I'm fine. I've been here. He offers to walk her back to the cabin, but she insists she can do it herself.
Hmm.
And she warns him that she knows Tai Chi. And he's like, well, I think you mean Taekwondo because Tai Chi is just like leg bending.
It's like,
um, he gives her directions and wishes her luck. And she wanders off. And I noticed that she was wearing a red shirt and she's lost in the woods. And I got a Little Red Riding Hood vibe from this.
yeah.
And I mentioned this on the podcast before. I don't know if I mentioned it to you. But my friend used to take film studies, and they told her back in the day when a character wore red, that meant danger was coming.
Hmm.
I don't know if they still apply that in modern times in wardrobe, but that's just the vibe I was getting because she was in red.
That's a good observation.
Yeah.
Because we know.
And I was like, ooh, are they actually gonna like kick this off with like 2 weeks left of like this arc? He I'm sorry, I got lost. I'm in the wrong paragraph. Kevin fills Lucy in on Rhonda and how she freaked out about him showing her the picture
Hmm.
and trying to talk to her about the computer.
Hmm.
And Lucy's like all about this. Like she just like wants to like put her investigation hat on. Frank introduces himself as Frank Scully, and I'm like, okay, like the X-Files, because that was popular back then.
Yeah.
And ask if she is Rhonda's older sister. Oh, ask Caroline if she's Rhonda's older sister. And Caroline's a little like thinks he's a little weird because she's like,
Hmm.
"What do you want with my 16-year-old sister? Like, you're clearly a grown ass man." Like,
Yeah.
um, Lucy and Kevin are going through old files looking for Caroline Wexler's file. And there's like no rhyme or reason to the filing system, but I let Lucy had a line and she's like, "Oh, Tracy Quartermain, boob job, 1978."
She came for a consultation for a boob job. I had to rewind that again. I was like, and I remember the soap magazines were like they love that scene too.
Did they?
Yeah.
Eve gets lost again, but eventually makes her way back to the cabin, and now it's dark, to find Michael sitting there waiting for her.
Ooh, creepy, kind of. I don't know. Maybe
And that would freak me out,
that would freak me out.
even though he
But
doesn't look like
2001
he's.
Michael Easton though.
Yeah. Frank hears Caroline on the phone with Cookie, who's canceling plans with her for their sister night to hang out together.
Hmm.
And Caroline tells her that she's going to go meet some friends at a movie, and she gives her the address and says you should meet us if you have time or whatever. And Frank thinks that this address sounds familiar, or the streets sound familiar. And he looks at the calendar and sees that it's May or March. May or March? March.
Because
Whatever.
we're in May right now.
Right. March, whatever the date was that the accident happened. So he rushes out of Kelly's after her. And he tries to stop her from crossing the street, but just as she steps off the sidewalk, a car comes rushing by and hits her.
Mm.
And Frank screams for Caroline. Eve invites Michael in to take a look at a cut that he has that looks infected.
Mm.
And at first he's like, no. And then he's like, oh, you really think it's infected? Frank is too late, and Caroline is hit by the car. He tells the driver to use his cell to call 911, and they're like, "What?" And he's like, "A payphone, whatever, just call 911." He begs Caroline to hang in there, and she gains consciousness and asks how he knew this would happen. Now, for a slight moment, I'm like, "Okay, are you messing with time again?" I was like, "Because you were there this time, is she gonna
Mhm.
survive, and is that gonna change everything?" Like,
Yeah.
and then I started thinking if there was like a reporter or some kind of news thing happening on the accident, if there was
Mhm.
pictures in the paper, would Frank be seen in the background of the accident?
Yeah.
I think that would be like a cool tidbit. Like if in the
Yeah.
future you came across like a news article and saw a picture of Frank in the background.
Mhm.
But something like that might happen because there was a photo taken later on.
Mhm.
Um, Frank holds Caroline and he tells her about her legacy of Karen and how she will be a doctor as Caroline dies in his arms.
Mhm.
But Ian is being bullied by his ghost sister about his feelings for Eve. um, Michael tells Eve to lock her door, and she doesn't think. Oh, she doesn't think she has to because she's safe in the middle of nowhere.
Mhm.
Um, Later, the door flies open and her fire goes out, and she still doesn't lock the door. I mean, like, if the wind was blowing open my door, I would lock it at least to like stop
Yeah.
it fully blowing. But all right. And she also hears a lot of weird noises. The EMTs come to the accident scene, and Frank tells them that it's too late. He finds her necklace on the floor and he picks it up. Cookie arrives and is inconsolable that her sister is gone and blames herself for not meeting her at Kelly's.
And I think because she's inconsolable, I was like I was like screaming at the screen, like Cookie, just tell him how you know his how do you know her name? But I think because she was so inconsolable, she didn't it didn't like cross her mind.
I thought that too. I was like, wait a minute. Why isn't she like, how do you know my name's Cookie?
Mhm.
Or that's my nickname. Um, Frank comforts Cookie. Her father comes around and she tells him Caroline is gone. And they go to the hospital to say goodbye.
Mhm.
The next day, I assume, Frank is sleeping on a park bench, dreaming of reuniting with Karen. And Cookie finds him and wakes him up.
I like when Karen became like Karen's voice was like Cookie saying like uh did she say Frank wake up? Something like that. I
Oh,
like
and
the like
and
kind of
yeah.
yeah.
Livy takes it upon herself to go to the biker bar to find Zach. And I put after a bitch off with Sam, Zach comes out. um, and Livy says if he lets Jamal out of the race, she'll make it worth his while. And I'm like, oh, Livy, what are you doing?
Oh, no, not this again.
Stop trying to. At first, I'm like, stop trying to use sex because I didn't know like what was going to happen. Um, Frank talks with Cookie, and she notices the blood on his shirt, which upsets her, and she starts blaming herself again. And she tells him the story of how she used to call Caroline Karen because Frank mentions that he's looking for a girl named Karen. Um, Frank gives her the necklace, and Cookie invites Frank to stay at her house in the basement. So he's like, "Great, that's where the computer is. I can
Mhm.
fix everything." Livy ends up offering Zach a monthly payment for what he would have made on the race that
Mhm.
Jamal is going to be racing in, or she's trying to get him out of.
Yeah.
He doesn't take the deal, and she asks what he wants, and he says, "You." Cookie brings Frank to the room he'll be staying in and he wonders where the computer is.
Mhm.
Sam goes to see Jack and warns him that Livy went to see Zach. So he goes
Mm.
running to the biker bar.
Just goes boop 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 boop.
Livy says she offered Zach a fair offer, and if he won't take it, she's out of there. But he and some goons stop her from leaving and say they're having a party and she's the guest of honor. Now, I didn't like this. This felt very sexual assaulty.
Yeah.
It made me
like I'm hoping it's like I know the show is Supernatural, but it's not as supernatural right now. But I was like, ooh, remember when Marlena was hypnotized by like Stefano and she became the queen of the night before she got possessed?
Yeah.
I was hoping it was something like that, but I was like, wait a minute, this part is not supernatural. So
Frank is irate and demands to know where the computer is. And then Cookie's father stumbles in because he's drunk, like he always is, and wants to know what he's doing in his house with his kid. Livy tells Zach that if he lays a hand on her, she'll break it. He touches her and she jabs him in his stomach.
Oh.
And then the goons hold her back. I was like, oh wow, she got a lick in. She was like, boom. Cookie's father blames her for not meeting with Caroline, and that's why she died. And it's this whole dramatic scene of her blaming herself, and she's like, you also blame me for mom's death because she died after she had me, and she's like, you wish it was me that had died. Which the actress was doing a very good job, but I didn't see any tears. She just kind of scrunched her
See, I tend to sympathize with people who can't cry because when I was trying to be an actress, I couldn't cry. So, so it's like, okay, I get it. Tears are hard. You could have been like, oh God, I don't know if you remember or if you were watching One Life at the time. Remember when they did the episode where they swapped characters called Trading Places?
No, I haven't really watched a lot of One Life to Live.
Okay. Well, we need to watch it. It's one episode. It's like you don't need context for any other episode because it's like a special 4th of July episode. They did one called Trading Places and one called Babes Behind Bars. And then there was the one part where so Nora swapped places with Lindsay. Nora and Lindsay are like sworn enemies at this point. And Nora as Lindsay used like a eyedropper and just put it like at her eyes to fake crying.
Really?
Yeah.
Was the Women Behind Bars thing like a nod to like Chicago? Like the
musical? Yeah. Wait, would it have been Chicago at this point? I guess it would have.
Did they do a musical
come out
episode? Well, Chicago's always is an older like.
Well, I meant like the movie.
The movie came out maybe like 2002 or 3.
Yeah, that would have lined up.
Or 4, maybe around there.
That would have lined up, but it wasn't like an exact spoof. It was just like, oh, they're happy, they're singing, they're happy, but they happen to be in jail, and there was like funny elements to it too.
Okay, that actually sounds like a fun episode.
Yeah, we should do those 2 episodes.
Oh, it's 2 episodes?
So it's Babes Behind Bars and Trading Places. They aired like I think they aired like a year of like 4th of July, like 1 year, 4th of July the next year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think this was around the time that Frank Valentini took over as executive producer.
Okay.
But Ron Carlivati was still like lower level in the he was still lower level, so he wasn't like a writer yet. And they had they had brought back Michael Malone, I think.
Okay.
Not Josh Griffith, but Michael Malone. And then it didn't work out, and that's when Ron took over.
Oh, okay. And then the writer's strike happened, and then Ron came back, and I kind of know the trajectory from there.
Yeah. Got canceled.
Eve calls Chris and tells him where she's staying. She's like, I don't know why I'm being so mysterious about this. I'm staying at the cabin. She asks if he's seen Ian, just as like Ian like walks into the recovery room, the bar, not the hospital. He says no, and she assumes he's been spending a lot of time at home these days with Ariana being there. Ian meets with Gabby at the recovery room, and she gives him the meds he'll need for Ariana. And Ian asks her if she's heard from Lambert or knows where she is. And Gabby says, sorry, all she knows is that she put in for the time off.
She put her PTO in.
Chris tells Eve when she returns, they're going to have a serious discussion about his proposal as he like looks at the ring. And Ian, I guess, spots the ring, which prompts Chris to kind of assume that she's going to say yes. And he talks about being with a special woman, and he's like, oh, I can't wait to meet her. He's like, wisecracks aside, he's like, I'm happy for you. I can't wait to meet her or whatever. Eve decides she's going to pack because she's not about this camping life, even though she's staying in a cabin. And she says she would never make it on Survivor 3. Now, I thought I got a chuckle out of this because my best friend does a reality TV podcast, so he's like really into Survivor. And we're at like Survivor 46 right now. So
we are.
Like, I got a chuckle out of that.
The only one I watched was the Australian Outback, which is 2, I believe.
Oh, okay.
The one right after the first one.
Okay.
I don't know why. I really liked that one. And then I just stopped watching it. So I was like, I don't want to watch Survivor. And then I was like, oh, this Australian one looks good. That's the one with Elizabeth Hasselbeck in it.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
I actually really love Australian Survivor, like the Australian version of it. It's like really good. I'm obsessed with it. Where am I? Oh, as she's leaving, she runs into Michael outside the door. Frank talks to his mom in 1973. And I was kind of trying to like notice the differences in the kitchen. I noticed the glassware was very 70s because it was glass. It wasn't like a plastic like iced tea thing. And there were little things that I was just like, oh, this is very 70s. She actually kind of questions, how do you know where the cups are? And he almost slips and says, they've always been there. And he's like, oh, it's kind of the same setup as my kitchen.
Then I noticed the door to the basement, which is an apartment. I wonder if that was an apartment then.
She mentions Frankie's playing upstairs, and that I don't know if it's the same door, but the door she opens is to go upstairs and not down. So I'm like, oh, isn't that the apartment door though? Maybe they renovated since the 70s. Yeah. But this is when Frankie comes down and he has like a camera and he takes a picture of Frank. And I'm like, okay, this feels like something I should remember. Because maybe during Lucy and Kevin's investigations, they find a picture of Frank in the 70s as an adult.
Yeah.
I haven't mentioned them much because I really didn't take too many notes on it. But Lucy and Kevin are like doing like a full-on investigation. They like go into the basement to find the computer. They find a yearbook from 1973 that Rhonda had like took a clipping of herself and put it next to like Scott's picture and put a heart around it. Yeah, they were just fun scenes. They don't really have drama going on. They're kind of just like in Frank's drama right now.
And then did we get to the part where they talk to Scott?
That was the last episode.
Okay, never mind. I'm not gonna mention until we get there.
Yeah, we're almost there. Cookie's father is wheeling the computer in, and she wonders how Frank knew about it. And Ian drinks at Jake's. I'm assuming that's Jake's, right? The bar.
Yeah.
And he thinks about Eve. I think
kamikaze.
Cheers to like the one that got away. Yeah, he thinks about like, I guess this is like an infamous scene of her dancing on the bar.
Yeah.
Is this like the first time like they connected?
Yeah, I believe so. I actually forgot about that scene until he mentioned the kamikaze.
When he said the kamikaze, I'm like, oh, that's Eve's drink.
Oh, there we go. The kamikaze.
So was that like I feel like that's almost like an introduction. Like maybe she like He was like a new character on the show. Like,
Yeah, he was in he started very shortly before the arcs. So like Rachel was still on the show at that point.
oh, right.
Yeah, Livy's mom.
Mhm.
Well, not mom. Well, yeah, it's complicated. But the woman who we thought was Livy's mom.
Oh, I don't
was
know that she's
actually
not
her
her mom.
aunt. So it's actually her aunt.
Oh, no, I did know that. Yeah, that was part
Yeah.
of the story. Right. Okay. Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, they barely have Kevin and Livy together now that I think about it, the past few weeks.
I feel like that changes though.
Yeah, oh, it does.
Michael has brought Eve some fresh fruit and bread and sees that she's leaving, but she says, well, you brought all this food. Why you let it go to waste? Why don't you come in and help me eat it?
Mm-hmm.
And she invites him in. Michael accepts her invitation, and right before he enters, he looks out at the woods, seemingly worried. And I'm like, get me all excited.
On the
horizon. Lucy and Kevin pay Scott a visit. And I put it, Scott's eating fish sticks. He's like, you don't want fish sticks, do you? He thinks that they're there to see Serena, but he's like, oh, you're actually just here for a visit to see me? They question him about like his relationship or like what he knew about Rhonda, like growing up, like in high school. And he mentions, there was a tragic accident, her sister died, and that she was put in a mental institute. Did we know this? That she was institutionalized?
I don't think we knew that. Because remember, this is the alternate timeline of what actually happened.
Okay.
This is the alternate timeline. This is what happened if Karen wasn't born. And then remember when he said, I don't know why I laughed at this part where he said like, "Oh, Rhonda called me, but I turned her down." So I went out with a freshman, and they were like,
That triggered me for a minute because I'm like Laura, because weren't him and Laura like teenage like lovers or?
They were. That's right.
And I know that technically this is an alternate reality, but like, I don't know. I feel like, I don't know. Laura was a teenager, I thought, when they were together.
They were.
I'm like, how does this factor into like the General Hospital, him and Laura timeline?
Yeah, just like and I lightly touched on it like earlier on. Just like that, there was a whole entire arc where Karen, Jason, and was it Jagger, I want to say, were on an island and they were trapped on the island. And we are led to believe that Karen was a shy girl in high school when she had all of this storyline around Karen, Jagger, Brenda.
Like, we saw her high
Jagger,
school.
Brenda. So we're led to believe, and we're led to believe that she was like on the bleachers, like wishing that she was with Frank. And I'm like, I don't think that's what happened.
That's not what I remember. I was there.
I wasn't there for that, but I saw clips, and I know that doesn't add up.
Did she get married in high school? Like,
no. You're talking about Karen?
Yeah, Karen and Jagger. Did they get married while they were like?
No. This was after high school. I think after the whole like stripping story with Sonny.
Gotcha. Eve notices Michael has a large ring on, and he says it's his family's crest. And she wants to know more about it, but he's very like, I should get out of here. Like, you were gonna leave. And she's like, what do you have, a hot date? And he's like, something like that, like kinda. So she's like, oh, you should have said something. And he's like, I didn't want to be rude. So he thanks her and he leaves. Cookie ends up going to Frank to tell him her dad brought home the machine he was talking about. And he says he has to see it. And she says she's not going anywhere with him until he explains. Livy and Jack. Oh, so Livy's pissed at Jack because to get her out of the bar, he kind of had to like talk down about her, like be misogynistic and be like,
Yeah.
the little woman, sometimes she gets these bright ideas. So I'm like, that pisses Livy off. But they make up because he explains that he had to get her out of there, and she was like, "I was so scared." Hold me. So they make like a fire, and Jack goes to get more wood, and Livy's being watched. Now, you had mentioned like we're not in the supernatural part with these characters yet, but part of me was like, is somebody named Caleb watching her? Like, are they like teasing that? But I don't think so based off of the previews.
Yeah.
Eve finds Michael left his jacket and wonders if she can still catch him. Livy hears a noise in the woods that startles her, and she thinks Jack is playing a joke on her, and she's like, "This isn't funny."
The main line in every horror movie, "This isn't funny."
Frank sneaks into the Wexler basement with intention of destroying Nellie. He even talks to Nellie, like, you and I like have created a lot of trouble. He says he has to destroy Nellie before him and Karen, before him and Cookie start talking. Remember back early on when him and Cookie were starting to talk, I felt like she mentioned that she lost her best friend. She didn't mention that her best friend was her sister. Do you think that's a detail that they left out on purpose? Because because we later like get the reveals that she's connected to Karen, so it was like they worded it in a certain way.
Well, remember Cookie wasn't popular in school, so like she would go in the Jakes.
Mm-hmm.
No, sorry, Kelly's. She'll go to Kelly's. I was like, that doesn't sound right. She'll go to Kelly's. People will make fun of her. Scott like kind of like pushed her off to the side. So her only friend was Carolyn.
Yeah. But I feel like she didn't mention it was her sister. She just said, "I lost a friend recently. I have no one," and that's why she was like talking to Frank. She's like, "I'm alone." So I feel like maybe they worded that because as the arc went on, we found out more things. So maybe they worded it that way so we could be like, "Oh, it's her sister." Like,
yep.
Because there was a time that we thought Caroline was Cookie, and we found out that it was Rhonda.
Yeah.
So, Eve wanders into, I guess, a church and finds Michael dressed as a priest or a reverend. I don't know, like, what he's actually.
It's a priest. Priests have like the white collars. I'm assuming he's Catholic, because most soap operas tend to follow the Catholic or Protestant route. But I'm assuming he's Catholic. Also, because I am a Catholic, or at one point was a Catholic, I know this a little bit. So
I guess I'm a bad Catholic because I was raised Catholic and I couldn't really tell.
Yeah, I know that they have the white collar, and on Sunset Beach. Wait a minute. On Sunset Beach, when Gabby and him and Antonio got together, that collar came right off.
Livy calls Jamal from her cell, and she's really worried because she can't find Jack. It seems like Jamal's like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "He's been gone for a while. We're in the woods." And she's like, "I really think something's wrong." And that's how it ends. I think maybe she was being watched still, the way the camera was, but that's how it ended. But then my whole supernatural theory gets, busted because in the previews for the following week, we see Jack unconscious. So clearly it was probably Zach and his goons beating him up. But yeah, a fully loaded week or 2
weeks. 2 weeks.
I love it. I love that Eve met Michael. I'm getting really
Yeah.
excited about Tainted Love. Um, the the whole 1973 stuff is really interesting. I felt
Hmm.
like it took us a really long time to get here, but we're finally here.
Yeah, yeah.
As far like as what this arc is supposed to be about, time travel.
Yep.
um, I'm still waiting. Maybe it happens in the next 2 weeks. You had mentioned there was like a list of like the best supernatural storylines and soaps, and Time in a Bottle was like on the list. And I was like, I'm waiting to see why that is.
Yeah, like I said, I didn't watch that number one slot because I wanted to watch like the storyline first.
Uh-huh.
Wanted to like watch the storyline first because there were certain elements that I don't remember, like going back to 1973.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't watch that because I remember like like it was like, okay, Karen's gone, and then I picked up on Tainted Love. So there's a whole 3-4 weeks that I've missed on Time in a Bottle. So I knew he goes back in time, but I just didn't know like what happened with that.
Right. I'm very interested in to see if this photo that was taken of Frank plays a part in Lucy and Kevin's investigation.
Hmm.
Um, little tidbit. It was a stupid thing, but Serena ends up coming out and saying hi to Lucy and Kevin. And as they're leaving, Lucy calls her Pumpkinhead.
Love it.
I know that she was trying to say a term of endearment, but I was like, was that scripted or did the actress just like kind of flub and she was just like,
No, she
"Goodbye,
been called her
Pumpkinhead."
Pumpkinhead.
She
She does call her Pumpkinhead
does
all the
call her
time.
Pumpkinhead. Okay, I was like,
Yeah,
that's
when Serena appears more pre-arc, you'll hear it a lot.
okay. I'm like, I wouldn't want somebody to call me Pumpkin. I was like, my head looks like a pumpkin, really? That's not sweet.
That's why I wish that like Serena was and Lucy were more, well, Serena especially. Serena was in Port Charles. I'm not General Hospital. I mean, so that way, like we can like during her teen years, so we can be like Lucy could be like, "Hey, Pumpkinhead, don't call me Pumpkinhead."
You're so embarrassing, God.
I'm trying to remember if she called her Pumpkinhead when Lee died. I don't think she, because remember the actress who played Serena came back when Lee died.
I wasn't watching. I did hear she came back. It was this
Yeah,
actress though.
yeah, it was the same actress. Yeah, it
Oh, that's
was
cool.
Charlie Schroeder.
That's cool. Because I think I heard she's like in the military now.
She
She's in a
is.
military career. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So that's why we want Serena back, but we're okay with Carly not coming back because she's serving our country for the good America.
Yeah. But we'll take a recast.
So we're okay with a recast. Like we've been we've been wanting Brie Williamson as Serena.
Really?
The actress who plays Sasha, I forgot her name. Oh my gosh, Sasha from General Hospital,
Mm-hmm.
the one who keeps getting.
Oh, what's her name?
Poor baby.
Oh. I can't remember the actress's name.
Because I know Willow's Kayla McMullen, and then Sasha is Sophia Matson.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else to add on these 2 weeks?
I can't wait to end this. Not in a bad way, but like not in like, oh, I can't wait to end this. This is terrible arc. No, actually, this is better than I thought it was, and I like how not Time in a Battle, Tainted Love gets kind of introduced now.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like how the computer was introduced in Fate at the end of Fate. So that's cool. So these next couple of weeks, you don't really have a recollection of because you haven't really seen.
No, I mean, I am spoiled by one element that I'm not going to mention. I did spoil myself in one element because I was like, oh, how did this happen? And I looked it up on Soap Opera Central, I think it was. Where the character profiles.
Mm-hmm.
So I did get spoiled. I was like, okay, what happened with this character? Because I just want to know. I want to know how this character leaves.
Right.
And which you by saying leave, you probably can pick up who it is.
I wish she would. I wish she just would leave already.
Yes.
Just go.
I was like, okay, how does she leave? I just need to know. So yeah, she does leave before
I
Tainted Love.
mean, not that she was really only on once these
Mhm.
last 2 weeks, but so we have 2 weeks left, so she has to have her surgery and be cured because she's not in Tainted Love, so, like, is she just gonna
Mhm.
go away and we never talk about her again? Uh, but also, I feel like maybe Michael and Eve might have a lot of scenes together in these last 2 weeks coming up,
Mhm.
because I seem to remember the beginning of Tainted Love, they seemed like they were already close,
Yeah.
like, they had, like, a closeness to them. So, I'm anticipating that, plus love seeing Michael Easton.
Yes.
Can't wait till he pulls double duty as 2 characters.
Yep.
Um, but alright. Well, thank you for joining us for another edition of Port Charles Time in a Bottle. We are nearing the end. Um, as always, you can find us on all the socials at Queers and Soaps, and until next time, have a great day. Bye.
Bye.